we are your hosts, Nick Smith.
And Kylie Jo Smith. And today we have a special guest.
Special guest.
Who?
Yes.
Who is that?
You don't know him.
He'll be here later.
He's new.
New guy.
New guy. But before we get into our conversation with our special guest, Frankie Shayne, we want you to share this episode. And if you want more content, we got bonus episodes. We got mini stuff. We got all sorts of deals. It's on our Patreon. You can be a part of our inner circle. And
Yes.
so check
It's only
that
$2
out.
a month, which we recently learned
Mhm.
is less than the cost of a protein bar.
That's right.
Normally we say it's less than a cup of coffee, but that doesn't appeal to this generation as much
Yeah.
anymore.
But protein bar?
Protein bar?
Straight up.
We've been
You-
eating
Yeah.
a lot of those lately.
Yeah. So you can be a part of our inner circle for less than the cost of a protein bar.
Or a candy bar.
Or a real bar.
Or
Less than it costs to buy a bar.
I don't think so. I think that's
Less than the
misleading.
cost of an energy drink.
Ooh.
Oh, there we go.
That's right.
Thank
And those
you.
are very popular.
Thank
They're
you.
quite
Just saying.
popular.
So sacrifice one energy drink a month.
And there you go.
And there
Join
you go.
us.
And there you go. Well,
And they're not good for you anyway, people.
it's
Exactly.
exactly. Come on.
Come on.
Thank you.
Come on, people.
See, that's what we
Me.
need.
I'm people.
Reinforcement
I'm just
I'm
saying.
people.
of the
you know.
truth of people.
I'm people. Me. Come on, people. Well, so today we've been in the studio with Frankie Shayne all day. And
Oh, yeah.
What you need to know about him, first off, is he's awesome. Oh, that's the
Oops,
mic.
that's-
Second off, is that he is an awesome musician. He's got music out, so you can look up Frankie Shayne on Facebook, on iTunes, Spotify.
Mhm.
He's got a single out right now called Broken Man.
Broken Man.
And it is super dope. You need that in your
Yes.
life. So
Look it up.
check that out. And we are just enjoying this time together in fellowship.
Yeah. Well, something that we had talked about, and we were like, we should definitely have that on a podcast sometime. We just
Yes.
wanted to discuss this. Is this? I don't want to say it's a phenomenon because it's not. It's this lesser known
Mhm.
reality that for Indigenous or Native American, for those of you who still know
Yes.
what that means,
Yeah.
Native American women, there's just an exploitation that doesn't get talked about in mainstream media. And so Frankie Shayne actually is Native American.
Yes.
And
Don't let the beard fool you.
That's right. Don't let the Amish looking
Or the
beard.
lack of hair on top fool you.
Yeah,
Just
when you see his
flipped.
single cover, don't let that mislead you. And so just hearing a little bit from him and wanting to know more about this, we wanted to have this conversation. Like,
Yeah.
why don't we talk about this? What do we need to know? And what can we do
Well,
in our
and-
daily lives?
And before we get into that, tell those listening, what's your tribal affiliation, and tell us a little bit about where you come from.
Yes. I was born and raised. Well, I was born in Claremore, Oklahoma.
Okay.
I was raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I am on the Cherokee Indian rolls.
Okay.
I have my CDIB card showing I'm half blood, 15, 30 seconds.
There you
Okay.
go.
And I've got my roll card number and all of that. My mother is on the rolls as well. My grandparents and everyone. Interesting story is that we're on the Cherokee rolls,
Mhm.
but we found out several years ago that there's a very, very high possibility that we're not actually Cherokee,
Okay.
but we were grandfathered in the Cherokee rolls because of being in Oklahoma.
Mhm.
That is the predominant tribe there.
Gotcha.
And so we're grandfathered into that. But they after all this stuff with the internet happened and be able to track genealogies, it was discovered that they believe we're actually Nachi Indians.
Okay.
Wow.
And there's a town which my Native American family all kind of originated from in southeast Oklahoma. And right next to this town, which is called Vian, Oklahoma,
Okay.
is a little town called Nachi Town. And
Okay.
it's
Wow.
got its own. It's literally you drive by it, and it's like there's a couple houses.
So it's like Plainville.
Yeah, but it says Nachi Town, and it's it's recognized and stuff. But
Yeah.
so that's just an interesting little side
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was born and raised in Oklahoma. Raised, I have a white father, and my mother's full blood Cherokee Indian, or that's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
we've been associated to.
Yes.
So we still say that because everything is at this point. There's no way to prove it one way or the other because
Got you.
the Nachis were not large enough to have their own tribal. What do you call it? Nation. They didn't have
Okay.
their own tribal nation, and they don't. There's no way to actually have recorded any of that information.
Gotcha.
Which brings us to what we're talking about today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we, Kylie Jo and I had spoken about this as well as you. We had done kind of a group text thing, which we do a lot, people. A lot of group texting
Yes.
going on with this
Yes.
little inner group
All
of people.
family. This is our inner circle.
Yeah, and we just broke bread together, which is
That's
another phase in the relationship.
That's
It's getting pretty heavy. So anyway, No, but we had spoken when all of this, all of the things that we've all heard about lately on the news, with Black Lives Matter, with the police inequality as it regards to different racial groups, ethnic groups. We'd heard Black Lives Matter several years back.
Yeah.
And it sparked something in everyone, but there were some riots in I think that was when Ferguson went down, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But it was very localized. It was just Ferguson, that particular incident, and it did raise national awareness, but it kind of started and stopped with Ferguson.
Yeah.
But now we're faced with this situation where people are like, okay, enough's enough.
Yeah.
Ferguson didn't solve anything. It's still happening.
That's right.
And then more and more people in different ethnic groups began to say, hey, it's not just Black lives that are experiencing these inequalities and this persecution. We're seeing it through various different, things, different racial groups.
Yeah.
So me being raised Native American, but raised basically in Tulsa where it was, I wasn't on a reservation.
Yeah.
I wasn't living in a teepee or wigwam or nothing like that.
Right.
I lived, I was for the most part protected. My family, we were fairly protected from all that. I didn't really see much of it. But my family in Southeast Oklahoma, many of my aunts and uncles, grandparents and people, they had been subject to this racial inequality and to racism, blatant racism, because of the fact that they were Native Americans.
Yeah.
Many times Native Americans, one of the things that's often said about them is, oh, they're just a bunch of drunks.
Yeah.
They're just a bunch, they're thieves, they're this and that. And, it's a modernized way of saying what was said in the beginning. Oh, they're savages.
Yep.
Exactly.
That's another way of them saying it is by saying, oh, just a bunch of drunks. These Indians, they get money from the state because of, the oil lines and things running through Oklahoma, which a lot of Indians or Native Americans do.
Yeah.
Not everyone. We never did.
Yeah.
And then, a lot of it sometimes alcoholism does run rampant. I have members of my family on my mother's side that died from alcoholism or died because of the drunk driving or something related to, alcoholism. So, but when this came back up and more people began to think, this isn't right. It wasn't right the first time. It hasn't been right all these years, but we all have just said, that's a part of society or something that feels uncomfortable to talk about. So let's just not, unless it directly affects us, let's not, which is the same way people are doing now with mask wearing, with coronavirus.
Oh my goodness.
They're like, well, it doesn't affect me personally.
Yep.
So why are you making me wear a mask?
Yeah.
Right.
And now some of those same people who have grandstanded, is that correct?
Yeah. Grandstanded.
Okay.
I like grandstood.
Grandstood. Yeah, there you go.
I don't know.
Against it have now some of those major players have come down with it.
Yeah.
And even, Herman Cain recently passed away
Yeah.
because of it.
I remember reading
So,
about that.
you got to be careful what battles you fight.
Yeah.
But as a society, it's time something changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it motivated me to start looking into the systemic problems with racism as it affects directly Native American people.
Yeah.
And to see some of the things that have been going on. Because I know it's there, and I know that in areas where reservations are present, that the racism there is still much stronger than I would see walking down the street today. Okay?
Yeah.
So as all this came out, I talked with my mother, my mom, who is 100 full blood.
Yeah.
And we just began talking about it. And we had talked about it before, about activists like John Trudell. John Trudell, he started the American Indian movement back in the 60s and 70s. My uncle was a part of the AIM movement.
Wow, that's awesome.
From Oklahoma. And he actually had, there was a big march that they did, and they took over Alcatraz because there was a loophole in the law that anything like that's unclaimed for so long that is public land. And so
I remember reading about this. Yeah.
John Trudell was the one that basically started that whole movement, said, let's take over Alcatraz. So all these Native Americans marched, and they went and they got on boats and stuff, and they went to Alcatraz, and they literally took Alcatraz for quite a while.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Wow.
That's cool.
That's one of the things I want to get into more detail about.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been looking into John Trudell for a few years now because I was interested. Now, in his later years, it turned from just being about the earth and about being good to mankind, and about equality. But he touched on something that a lot of Native Americans didn't, and that was the fact that the very sovereignty that was given to them when they were chased off their lands, but they were given the sovereignty to be their own nations, govern their own people, actually became a crippling, how would you say it, a crippling, what's the word? For lack of a better term, I'm going to go simple, thing.
Yeah,
became a crippling thing to
it's
them.
A deal.
Crippling part of legislation.
Oh,
That's what I'm saying. That, in effect, yes, you can govern yourselves, but now, if anything ever comes up, you're in our country, but you need our help. Sorry,
but you're not.
Yeah.
Gonna
you're
get
on
it.
your own.
Yeah.
So even though you're part of this country, you live in this country, you are here in this country first.
Right.
We're the governing body. Sorry.
Or the Barty. It
Yeah,
don't matter.
either one works.
Whatever you want to be, really.
It starts and stops with that.
Yeah.
We're not going to extend ourselves to you any more than we have to. We
Yeah.
owe you because we took your land, so we're going to give you these few things here.
Yeah.
And essentially, they were relegated to, in the most part, unfarmable lands
Yep.
and
Yeah,
things
of course.
like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's no. I'm not saying anything that people you can't look very easily and see.
Yeah.
But then arose this thing, as you said, I don't want to call it phenomenon either because it's been going on for a while, but it's been a covered truth.
Yeah.
And now we're uncovering it now that this is coming around. But it's the missing and murdered Indigenous women.
Yeah.
There is a huge number of women every year that either go missing or found murdered near or around Indian lands. Most of them are up around Montana, Wyoming, and that part of Canada. We're all in those areas because there's a lot of reservations there.
Yeah.
And there have been women that have been, found dead, and for in whatever state they were found dead. And I say state, I'm talking about not geographically. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah.
The physical.
whether
Yeah.
they looked as though there had been rape or whether it had been murder, whether it had been intoxication, whether it had been foul play or not.
Yeah.
But because of this loophole on the government's swaying in their favor, most of those women, and I pulled it up and I was trying to find the exact statistic, but it's something like around 5,000 women roughly
Wow.
each year go missing.
That's so many people.
And of those, there is generally less than like 10% or less that are ever actually considered or given the nicety of becoming a case.
Wow.
Because of the sovereignty issue with the reservations and reservation police versus FBI and local authorities.
Yeah.
They're like, well, they probably just ran away.
Wow.
Or, they probably just hooked up with someone. They probably hitchhike and found somebody, and we'll hear from them later.
Yeah.
Or if they die, they're, it's natural causes. Or, there are things where they're not given even the
dignity
of being considered a case or given a name or a face or even, as I said before, a seat at the table to even be considered that this is worth our time looking into.
Yeah.
So since we had spoken last time, I've looked into it some more, and I've looked into more of like John Trudell and some of the things he had said and done. And he was a brilliant guy, and very much about, one another, very much about the earth and being kind to an earth. And part of that is being kind to your brother and sister because we all come from the earth, very, I don't want to say hippie, but that's
But
it
yeah.
is. He was very much that way. And John Trudell's family he was supposed to be home, and he had left for something. I think it was you'll have to look into the story. I don't want to misrepresent it, but
Gotcha.
but I know that the crux of the story is this. He was supposed to have been home, and he knew at this point, or he had conjectured at this point, because of everything he was doing in the government, they had gone up to the government levels, Supreme Court levels. He was catching a lot of heat, essentially, from the government for what he was doing. He knew he had been followed. He knew people had tried to get into their offices and things. And so he was very aware that he was on a short list of people to be shut up in one way or another.
Yeah.
But he was supposed to be home this evening. And for some reason or another, he had left. While he was gone, he came home to his house completely engulfed in flames and his wife and child inside.
Oh my gosh.
So he lost his wife and child in a fire. He then moved to Canada and, had what do you call it, sanctuary. He sought sanctuary in Canada and lived there for several years.
Yeah.
And then eventually, I believe he did move back to the States, and he died, I think it was in 2015. So
Oh, wow.
He
Pretty
died
recently.
just recently.
Yeah.
But if you ever look him up, John Trudell, look up his story and the American Indian movement and what that means, and then cross that with, there's a website, mmiw.com, which is Missing Murdered Indigenous Women.
Wow.
Yeah.
It will educate you on this problem
Yeah.
that we have that is, for lack of a better term, essentially unspoken of.
Yeah.
People don't know about it.
Yeah.
That's a huge number of people to go missing.
That's a lot.
That's more
And-
than a town.
Yeah. Especially in rural Kansas.
Yeah.
And so, but that's these kinds of numbers and the people that are being, just not even given the courtesy of given a case number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they literally just, they're gone, and that's literally what it's going to stay.
Yeah.
That's it.
They disappear. Their whole situation disappears. It's just something that's very sad, and attention needs to be brought to it. And
Yeah.
it's time now with the way things are, and with people being more aware of these types of social issues,
Yeah.
racial issues and things. I think it's just something that needs to be. It's a discussion that needs to be had.
Yeah.
Which is why I appreciate you guys bringing it up.
Yeah.
Here,
Of
you know?
course.
Yeah. And oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, just the research that I have been able to do just after engaging with you on it and going and looking, it really became almost a rabbit hole, because you start talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women. Then you get into healthcare disparities, food deserts,
Yep.
all of these things. And especially right now, I found a really just crazy amount of information about this global pandemic. And how we
Yes.
already know there's weirdness with the numbers reporting. Like,
Right.
we already are like, oh, that's weird. But then finding out that on reservations and among Native peoples, those numbers are being skewed on purpose.
Yeah.
Yep.
And aid is being shirked.
Yes, because
purpose.
and it's so like, it is injustice
Yeah.
that is legislated, and it's
Well-
not anything new, but it's still
Yeah.
just like, no, you can't do that to people. Like,
Well,
you
and
can't.
that's why it matters for Christians. Like, it matters because it's an Imago Dei issue. It's like we are made in
Yes.
the image of God. And one of the things you had said earlier, Frankie Shayne, about it not really mattering to certain people because they don't feel affected by it.
Right.
But if you're a believer, if you're a follower in Christ, then injustice to any group of people is an
You should
affront.
feel it.
You should feel it. It's an affront to the image of God.
Yeah.
Right.
And these women, and I'm sure plenty of men as well, who are missing, but specifically the missing Indigenous women, they deserve the dignity that God bestows upon His creation.
Right.
And as believers, we need to step into that realm and at least have the conversation.
Yeah, we
And-
have to, and
Yeah.
because, like you said, with Black Lives Matter, it kind of shines light on not only the fact that, hey, there's a particular group of people that have experienced this particular type of oppression,
Yeah.
but then it shines light on, oh, wait, once you shine light on that, I see a little bit over here. Hold on, moving the
Yeah.
light. Now we see there, oh, there's some over here too.
That's right.
And it gives us the opportunity and brings more responsibility of like, okay, now that you know these things are real, what are you going to do?
Right.
How are you?
Exactly.
How's that going to change your perception, and how's that going to change your relationship with Native peoples?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I found some information from the Coalition to Stop Violence Against Native Women. And it says 4 out of 5 of our Native women are affected by violence today. The U.S. Department of Justice found that American Indian women face murder rates that are more than 10 times the national average.
Wow.
So homicide is
Wow.
the third leading cause of death among 10 to 25 years of age.
Wait. Homicide.
Homicide is the third leading cause.
Oh my
From
god.
Between
10.
10 to 24
So like
years
little
old.
girls.
Yeah.
We're talking
Yeah.
like children.
Yeah, this is prepubescent all the way to early adult 20. You're not
Right.
even grown. You can't even drink legally.
Right.
Like 20 years
Right.
old, you're still a baby.
Yeah,
Like,
and it says it's the 5th leading cause of death for American Indian and Alaska Native women between 25 and 34.
wow.
And that's for the center. That's from the Center for Disease Control and Preventative Homicide. So if you can grasp that,
Yeah.
it's just 10 times more
That's
than
ridiculous.
the national average
Yeah.
Yeah.
of overall.
Yeah.
10 times more than that is what directly affects just Native American women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and
So
what that made me think of is a lot of times what comes up in these conversations, specifically about taking it back to Black Lives Matter and their stance against police brutality, right?
right,
An argument that I hear often is, well, Black people are more violent, and that's why these things happen, which is an attack to take away the humanity of
Right.
a person.
yeah,
And what we see, and I know from experience in our family, when there was a murder, we know the amount of resources that were spent on searching out that case and trying to solve it was minimal at best.
Yeah.
And so when you have a group of people who are basically given a government sanction to, if you kill them, nothing will happen.
Yeah.
If you kill this group of people, you're fine.
right,
Because we know if we were to walk into the middle of Manhattan and pull somebody who is, middle class white woman and snatch her up, she's going to be on every milk carton.
Oh goodness, there's
You
going
know
to
what
be
I mean?
coverage that night.
But if you think about it, if you're a weirdie and you've got this demonic thing going on in your life and you want to do harm to a human being, you're going to look at the group of human beings that are not being represented, that get
Yeah.
no justice.
right.
Yeah.
And so, of course, if they're not even being given a case number,
Mm-hmm.
they're basically open prey for sickos.
Yeah. Well, and
Right.
there's also, I was looking at the statistics about sex trafficking.
Oh my goodness.
And that is,
yeah.
I mean, among minority women in general, those rates are just
Through the roof.
crazy.
Yeah.
ridiculous.
And
yeah.
the younger they are, the more vulnerable they are. We know that,
Mhm.
and just in general with people. But there's this target on, think about when you were talking about the geographical region,
Mm-hmm.
Wyoming, Montana, open land, open space,
Yep.
and reservation.
Very few law
It's
enforcement.
going to take a long time for police to probably get out there. So there's all these things that are done to make a people more vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right.
That, like you said, it's legislated that, and the stereotypes abound of like, when you, honestly, the way you worded it, like, well, that's just like saying, well, they're just savages.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, yes, it strips them of their dignity and worth to
Right.
say like, okay, well, this human being made in the image of God has gone missing. No, it's just some drunk guy's daughter.
Yeah.
Right.
Some Indian.
It's like, what?
She's fine.
No, like,
That's ridiculous.
or it's just part of their culture
Right.
that's how they deal with. No,
No.
that is not it. This is a human issue that we, as especially as believers,
yeah.
we have to take this to a different level of priority.
Right.
And there's no reason that in one of the most successful nations on the planet, one of the most wealthy
Mhm.
nations in the history of the
Mhm.
planet, that there's any group of people that can be marginalized to the point that their disappearance doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
But that's exactly what it.
that's
Yeah.
what's
and
happening.
it's despicable.
happening.
It's
Yeah.
despicable.
that is what, and as some, so like I have, I don't have enough skin in the game to be like, oh yeah, I've got-
literally.
but my family's heritage, I've got Native on my dad's side and on my mom's side. But
Mhm.
I'm so far down the line they couldn't trace
Right.
it anyway. But I got a
Right.
cool picture out of it, so that's awesome. It's a picture of my
Yeah.
great grandparents. I'm like,
Right.
hey, I know them.
Yeah.
But even just being a person of color in general, like the empathy is there. Like
Right.
the group of people, the indigenous peoples of this continent,
Right.
well, this whole North and South, like
Right.
they're not being represented in a way that even provides them with the dignity of you're a human being.
Mhm.
Right.
And all of this movement, all of these outrages, these riots, these protests, whatever you want to look at, all of it is to shine light that human beings deserve dignity.
Right.
Mhm.
And we deserve to, when we go missing, we deserve justice.
Right.
Mhm.
When someone gets killed, they deserve to have their case pursued at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I know they used to do on plantations, because they wanted to strip any sense of humanity or
Mhm.
dignity from the Africans that they were bringing over, they would do things that to paint them as animals,
Yeah.
to give them an image of savageness almost,
Yeah.
to where then people wouldn't feel guilty
That's right.
for the wrongs that they would do to them. And the same exact thing happened, like when people set foot here and saw people, and it's also that like instant encounter of the different, of the other. It's like, whoa, this is weird, and this is that's savage, that's messed up. Wow. And then you begin to distance yourself so much emotionally that, oh, I can treat you any way that I want because you're not really human like me. You don't dress like me. You don't believe like me. You don't do anything like me. So therefore, I can justify putting you in that position of abuse.
Yeah. Right. Well, and one of the things that
same thing was done with the Jews. I mean, that's essentially what they did.
Yes, well, absolutely.
That was the mentality. They were told that these people are less than human.
Yeah.
They're no more than animals. So you don't need to treat them with any more respect than you would a dog. You know.
Well, and there's documentation of Hitler actually studying Native American reservations before he implemented Jewish ghettos. Mm-hmm. So he actually looked at the way the U.S. did it and was like, "Oh, this is how you treat people you don't like?
Right.
Well, we'll do that." And he just took it a step further.
Yeah.
But it's the exact same thing.
Well, and people often we equate that like the Holocaust. We make it so much about their Jewishness as a faith that we forget that it was an anti-Semitic movement. It was based on an ethnic issue.
Right.
That was more of the issue than anything. And so we tend to be like, oh well, Hitler, man, he was just so awful. He didn't like those Jews, and that's God's people. No, he hated a race of people and found ways to justify killing them and abusing them. And that really, when we do that here, when we see that happening here, and we don't first take note of like, no, this is an issue that exists because someone is of a different ethnicity.
Right.
We remove our ability to actually speak about the issue because when we're making, well, it's because, it's geographical. It's because they're in this area. No. Right. It is literally because of the color of their skin, because of the bloodline that they have. That is why they're being treated this way. Right. Yeah. And once we acknowledge that, okay, now we can move forward and say this is wrong. And I guess that's where I'm at now. It's like, okay, what do we do if we know this is wrong?
Right. Yeah.
How can do I change laws? Can I go, do I go and march on something? And
you didn't know this? We've been waiting this whole time, Kylie. All you have to do is change the laws.
Missed that.
Goodness.
Missed it.
Well, and before we get to the practical application, thinking about one of the call outs for the church is a lot of the issues that stem from the justification of the murder of Native and Indigenous people actually stems from Christianity. And that's something we have to actually own, is that the Pope at one point, before there was Protestantism and all this, I mean, there's still Protestant anyway, but the Pope, the Catholics, the Catholicism that was so prevalent in the conquerors of this nation, the Pope said basically you can force them to be Christian, and if they don't want to be Christian, you can kill them or whatever you want to do. They're not human at that point. And so that history ingrained itself in how those colonizers who came to this country treated the natives of this country. And so as a church, we have to look at ourselves and not say, man, Jesus messed up. But it's like, man, as a church, we had some stuff wrong. And we have to take that ownership and not put this boundary of like, well, they don't follow Jesus anyway, so of course they hate us because of that. No, there's issue and tension because your religion actually justified the mass extermination of a people group. Yeah. And so we as Christians should be on the forefront on that line that says no more. We can't allow that anymore. Because of who Jesus is and because who he's called us to be. We can't sit back and say, well, it doesn't affect me, or, well, we'll pray for him. Like, what does that do? Right. I mean, prayer is great. I'm not trying to
go and
prayer.
Be well fed.
Oops, sorry. Not trying to knock prayer, y'all. Prayer is the stuff. But we also have money. We have a voice. We have resources. We have Facebook. We have social media. We can actually do more to let others know that there's an issue besides just sitting back and being like, well, I mean, I guess I'll just pray for people. Like, not just pray for people. Pray for people and. Pray for people and do. Pray for people and move. Pray for people and vote. Like, you've got to do more than just sit back and on your pious hunches.
Ooh.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. That's the name of our new album. I'm dropping it. Nick Smith featuring Pious Hunches. Anyway. But no, so Frankie, Shayne, do you have any thoughts? Like what are some things that the average person can do I mean, are we talking just awareness? Are we talking activity? I mean, are there organizations they can look into?
You can go to Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, MMIW.com, or I think it's actually MMIWUSA.org.
Okay.
And from there, there's a couple different resources. There's things you can do to get involved. There's things you can do to support.
Yeah.
You know, on a personal level, I mean, obviously it all starts with each one of us. You know, we all know that. But I think the main thing is just to not turn your head from the issue, to look into it, to to be aware of it. You know, that's the first thing, is to make awareness. I mean, how many people are probably going to hear this and never even realize this was any, you know, first time I mentioned it to Kylie Joe, she's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Wait, what are you talking about? And I started giving her numbers and things. She's like, why have I never heard of this?
Exactly.
And that seems like a big enough number that it should be all over the news.
Really? Yeah.
And again, the Native Americans in a lot of ways have been marginalized, have been silenced.
Yeah.
You know, even the situation with the pipeline, I remember that was a hot topic
Oh,
for
my
a minute.
goodness.
Yeah,
you know?
for a little bit,
Yeah, and I mean, those guys out there were hardcore. Like they were there, and the government guys were trying to get them to move. I remember seeing videos of them, and it was winter.
Yeah.
Winter, and they were out there, and they had fashioned some teepees and tent villages, basically.
Yeah.
And these guys were being hosed down with ice cold water.
Yeah.
In the freezing, like there was snow on the ground already.
Yeah.
Freezing temperatures, and they were standing there, not being violent, arms crossed in front of them, just taking cold water in the face.
Wow.
And because they were like, this is our land, you
That's
know,
right.
I mean, you've taken it once,
Yeah.
you know, this is what you've given us. And now you're coming back for what you gave us, because it's important to you.
Yeah.
Because
Now it's
you need
valuable.
And then even though the current presidency went ahead and said, we're going to let them do it, and they did it, within a month or two after that, there was a leak, which is what the people feared.
That's right.
There was a leak, and they said that, and from my understanding, I don't check this out for yourself, because the news cycle is crazy nowadays, so it's hard to keep up with everything.
True.
But if I remember correctly, it was a fault of the people who had put it in and not sabotage.
Of course.
And so it went to prove the natives who lived in that area, prove their point that, hey, this is not good for us. It's going to ruin our land. It makes it unfarmable. It makes it toxic. If it gets in our water supply. No, let them do it. Let them do it. They did it, and look what happened. Yeah. So, but the main thing first is to be aware of it. And then, just like I would or you would, the next thing is to go to some of these websites, Google it, Google murdered, missing Indigenous women. You can Google the statistics. You can Google the organization. You can Google support places. There's several different places that are doing things. There's also a coalition. Where'd it go? The MMIW Resource Guide, which is Lakota People's Law Project. So there's actually a law project they're working on to get legislation to make this more this situation where it's not everything sliding under the carpet, where people are getting a face, they're getting a name, they're getting a case. So these are things we can do, you know, on a personal level that will help us to, each and every one of us that are interested, that want to get involved, can do it. And I've honestly, you know, have considered reaching out to them about like an album release and stuff, if I could, you know, put their logo or something, you know, and just make people aware. If nothing else, then if people get the download or whatever, they can see that, or put it on my website, so people at least are aware of it. Like I said, that's the first step, is just making people aware, because it's amazing how many people don't even know. You know, and if you want to, this is a side note, if you want to see a movie that kind of talks about this and kind of brings this to the forefront, there's a movie called Wind River.
Wind River.
And Wind River is a movie about this exact thing. It's about someone that a young girl who they find her dead. It's in Wyoming. There actually is a Wind River reservation in Wyoming.
Okay.
And so they find this girl. Excuse me. And excuse me.
Not the Rona, right?
Yeah, not the Rona. I think it was that chicken I ate. Anyway, and it just follows the whole thing with them trying to figure out what happened to her.
Yeah.
The coroner at the very beginning said, oh, she died of natural causes, which she did, but he didn't give her a rape kit. He didn't look at the bludgeoning marks on her forehead or on her head or anything. And it just unfolds, and it's this whole mystery. But at the end, it gives statistics, legit statistics about all this stuff going on.
Wow.
So you can check that out as well. But the main thing I would say is look at these resources online. You know, for missing. It's MMIW is what it's the abbreviations or acronym, and so that's what you'll find it on Google. Really easy that way.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing I want to say, because we're gonna get out of here, get some last thoughts, but don't. You listening and watching, don't underestimate the power of mass of people being upset about an issue. Because as we've seen with all of this, because we've heard the argument, well, rioting doesn't fix anything and all these protests aren't fixing anything.
Incorrect.
There's been so much legislation passed within these past 4 to 5 months because of people standing up and saying enough is enough. Yeah. We've seen officers arrested. We've seen cold cases reopened. So things can change, and it does start with you caring enough about somebody's dignity as a person to say this isn't right, and I'm going to look into these organizations, and I'm going to share whatever kind of funding I can to help them, or I'm going to get the word out somehow. Because there's that false understanding of like, well, I'm just one person, what can I do? Or okay, so I know about it, so now what? No. There's change that happens, and it does start with being aware, becoming a good ally. Yeah.
And also like give your audience or your circle of influence more credit. Yeah. Because, Frankie Shayne is one person that we know.
That's right.
And so we'll listen to him, and then we will get to share with whoever we can things that Frankie. And so
and all you
and all y'all now responsible. But like, don't underestimate people's ability to be impacted by something. Yeah. Like you said, Frankie, like people just don't know, and so someone hearing like, oh my goodness, like these women and young girls, these children. There's somebody's mom, somebody's sister, somebody's auntie, somebody's daughter.
There's somebody.
And so, like, we all have relationships with somebody that we can like, oh my gosh, like, what would I do if that was my fill in the blank? Yeah. Or how would I feel? Like, being a parent of someone and no one caring about the fact that my child is gone and having no resources. That's the other thing that with reservations, we see, like you said, Frankie, there's this like, well, yeah, we'll give you this. Oh, also you'll be cut off from everything around you, but go ahead and have this. Yeah, you can't farm it. Yeah, you won't get medical resources the way you need them. Yeah, you'll probably end up having to look for food in areas and in ways that are not sustainable. But
and if you ever go outside of this, then we'll cut off funding anyway.
We'll cut off funding, and you'll be more susceptible to being harassed for things. So like knowing that these things exist on the reservations. Maybe you're someone who, you can tell people about it, you can talk about it, or maybe you live near a reservation. Yeah. And there are ways that you could be giving to them. You could connect with them. A lot of churches still set up missions. That's right. Near reservations, if they're allowed on reservations. Like there's ways for you to actually put your hands and feet to work. Yes. In addition to using your voice. And I think there's something that happens too, and we step out of the proverbial, like, yes, I want to help Native American people, into now I'm having relationship with people who are Native American. That's right. And seeing their suffering. Yeah. And God works in that as well. Yeah. Right.
And Frankie, Shayne, I want to thank you so much for being able to step into this space and speak for people that can't speak for themselves. Right. Because you told us that you spoke with your mother before coming, and like you have opportunities to put this issue before the masses, before the world, and with your music and with your platform, with your relationships, you know a lot of people around the world. And so thank you for stepping out, because it's so easy to live in a selfish bubble as a human being and only be worried about me and mine. I'm just going to worry about me and my household, but you're allowing your conviction, you're allowing the Holy Spirit to lead you deeper. And we're just so grateful to know you. And you and Patty, you guys are awesome. You guys on the camera can't see, but Patty's sitting right here. We just love you guys, and we're so thankful to be on this mission with you. And so the Nick Smith podcast, we're going to support.
I want to clarify one thing, just because I don't want to put misinformation out there. Yeah. I've got those numbers, and those numbers were not 5,000 yearly. Okay. I want to make sure we know that as so far as they can record. Because the problem is that statistics on this particular thing, because of the sovereignty issue
Yeah.
are extremely hard to get real numbers.
Okay.
But what they did was they gathered numbers, official statistics from ordinary law enforcement agencies and other groups, and the number comes up to a total of 5,712 cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women, focusing primarily on people living on reservations or native
Gotcha.
land. But nevertheless, it seems shocking to find that only 116 of those cases were ever included in the U.S. Department of Justice official missing persons list.
Wow.
So out of 5,700 plus,
Wow.
just a little over 100 people were even given
That opportunity.
included into the missing persons list.
Yeah.
So
Man.
Again, it's I don't want to give misinformation, but
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
to
but that's
correct
the type of things you can find on these websites. Is they'll
Yeah.
give you that stuff. But
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity for
Of
putting up
course.
with me, for
No.
feeding me,
No,
feeding me
man.
way too well.
Yeah, dude, that's how we do it. That's how we do it.
So, but yeah, I've been a listener, first time listener, long time listener, first time caller.
There it is. There it is.
So yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. I
Yeah.
love you guys. You
Love
guys
you too,
know
brother.
that,
Love you.
and I'm glad we decided to do this in person.
Yeah,
It's
not
way
on
better
the
this way.
Yeah.
on the interwebs.
And yeah, on the interwebs. And I look forward to your release coming up soon.
Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
Kylie Joe's single's
Kylie
coming
Joe.
out too.
Yes.
She's got her single
yeah.
getting ready to come out the 30th.
Yeah, the 30th.
Yeah.
Pre-order
30th.
start the 14th.
Yes.
Yes.
And so
And mine's out already.
yes.
Yes.
Broken Man,
Broken Man.
by Frankie Shayne. And I just want to let you guys know how much I love you guys, and I'm glad you guys gave me the opportunity to come out here and speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On some deep issues on both of these.
Amen.
We've recorded a couple, so
Yeah.
Yeah. And really,
And we'll do more.
Yeah.
We will have you back.
yeah, and we would love to, like, if you want to, I guess I'm just putting this out there for our people watching.
Or listening.
If you have questions or if you need extra resources, we're going to take all the links that Frankie shared throughout this one. We're going to put them in like a show notes kind of thing.
Yes.
You can go and click on those, and we'll include things on our page so that if you just want
Absolutely.
a quick reference, I know there is the I can't remember the
MMIW.
MMIW. I'm like MWIM. The missing, yes. They do have a Facebook page.
Yes.
Yes.
And even just liking the page, you'll get their posts every now and then.
Right.
You'll see them.
I
So,
followed that as well as their Instagram. They've got an Instagram as well.
oh yeah, good.
So yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Awesome. All right. Well, this has been the Nick Smith podcast. We hope you've gotten a dose of real life.
No myth.
Be
Be
blessed.